And today we're diving into a topic that's both fascinating and, let's be honest, a little bit anxiety-inducing: moving to another country. Specifically, we're looking at the top 7 countries where people are most likely to regret relocating. So over the next few minutes, we're going to unpack some of the common reasons why people end up regretting their moves to these 7 countries. Okay, let's kick things off with a country that might surprise some of you: the United States of America.
For starters, the U.S. has a pretty significant crime rate, especially in certain cities, and racial tensions unfortunately continue to be a major concern for many people, including expats. And then there's the whole issue of healthcare. Unlike many developed countries, the U.S. doesn't have universal healthcare, which means that if you get sick or injured, you could be looking at some seriously hefty medical bills. And speaking of expenses, the cost of living in many major U.S. cities is, well, let's just say it's not for the faint of heart. So while the U.S. certainly has its charms, it's not exactly a utopia, and for some expats, the realities of living there just don't live up to the hype.
Next up, we're heading south of the border to Mexico, a country known for its vibrant culture, delicious food, and stunning beaches.
One of the biggest concerns for people moving to Mexico is crime. While the overall crime rate in Mexico has been declining in recent years, certain areas, particularly border towns, still experience high levels of violence and drug-related activity. And unfortunately, police corruption is also a real issue in some parts of the country, which can make it difficult for expats to feel safe and protected. Another challenge for expats in Mexico is the language barrier. While English is spoken in many tourist areas, venturing outside of those zones can be tricky if you don't speak Spanish. And then there's the issue of cleanliness.
All right, let's hop across the pond now to the United Kingdom, a country steeped in history, culture, and, of course, tea.
One of the biggest complaints from expats living in the UK is, unsurprisingly, the weather. The UK is known for its grey skies, frequent rainfall, and general lack of sunshine, which can be a real drag, especially for people coming from sunnier climates. And then there's the cost of living, which, let's be honest, is enough to make anyone want to cry into their teacup. Housing costs in particular are notoriously high in the UK, especially in London, and food and energy prices have been skyrocketing in recent years. The job market in the UK can be incredibly competitive, especially for certain industries, and the work-life balance? Well, let's just say it's not exactly something that the UK is famous for.
Next up, we're venturing north to Canada, a country known for its friendly people, stunning natural beauty, and of course its, shall we say, invigorating winters.
But while Canada might seem like a dream come true for outdoorsy types and maple syrup enthusiasts, it's not without its challenges for expats.
One of the biggest hurdles for people moving to Canada is the immigration process, which can be notoriously long, complicated, and, let's be honest, a little bit soul-crushing.
And once you've actually managed to navigate the bureaucratic labyrinth that is Canadian immigration, you'll quickly discover that the cost of living in Canada is, well, not exactly cheap.
Housing costs in major cities like Toronto and Vancouver are through the roof, and everything from groceries to transportation seems to cost a small fortune.
And then there's the weather.
While Canadians might scoff at this, those long, dark, cold winters can be a real shock to the system for people coming from warmer climates. Let's shake things up a bit and head down to Brazil, a country known for its infectious energy, vibrant culture, and, of course, its world-famous carnival celebrations.
But while Brazil might seem like an endless party, it's not all sunshine and samba rhythms, especially for expats. One of the biggest concerns for people moving to Brazil is crime. Brazil has a high crime rate, particularly in major cities like Rio de Janeiro and Sao Paulo, and violent crime, unfortunately, is a real problem. Housing, transportation, and even everyday groceries can be surprisingly expensive in Brazil, especially if you're trying to maintain a Western lifestyle. While Brazilians are generally known for their warmth and hospitality, the cultural differences can be significant, and the language barrier can be a real challenge, especially if you don't speak Portuguese.
Next up, we're off to France, a country synonymous with romance, fashion, and, of course, delicious pastries. But while France might seem like a dream destination for many, it's not without its challenges for expats, particularly those who aren't fluent in the language of love, or, French. One of the biggest hurdles for expats in France is, unsurprisingly, the language barrier. While English is spoken in some tourist areas, venturing outside of those zones can be a linguistic minefield if you don't speak French. From navigating the healthcare system to dealing with administrative tasks, everything in France seems to involve an endless amount of paperwork, stamps and signatures. Housing costs are astronomical, and everything from groceries to transportation seems to cost twice as much as it does in other European countries. Finally, we're heading over to China, a country of ancient history, fascinating culture, and of course a whole lot of people. But while China might be an economic powerhouse with a rapidly growing global influence, it's not the easiest place to live as an expat. One of the biggest challenges for Westerners in China is, unsurprisingly, the language barrier. While English is becoming more widely spoken in major cities, venturing outside of those urban centers can be a linguistic adventure, and let's be honest, not always the fun kind of adventure. Chinese culture is vastly different from Western culture, and navigating those differences can be both fascinating and at times incredibly frustrating. Air pollution is a major problem in many Chinese cities, and it's not uncommon to see people walking around wearing face masks to protect themselves from the smog. And while China has made significant strides in improving its healthcare system in recent years, it's still not quite up to Western standards, which can be a concern for expats who are used to a certain level of medical care. So there you have it, the top 7 countries where people are most likely to experience a serious case of relocation regret. The key takeaway here is that thorough planning and research are crucial before making a big move. Talk to people who have actually lived in the country you're considering. Do your due diligence on things like visa requirements, cost of living and healthcare, and be honest with yourself about your own needs and expectations. Moving to a new country can be an incredible experience, but it's not something to be taken lightly. So do your homework, pack your bags, and most importantly, be prepared for the adventure, both the good and the, well, let's just say the character building.